These are 5 power tools that beginner woodworkers don't need to get started, and I'm going to show you what to use in their place. This should save you some money, show you some tips and tricks along the way, and help build your woodworking skills. Let's go. Now, when I started out woodworking, I was very broke. I didn't have any money. I had to borrow tools to get started, a circular saw and a couple of drills. I started in a very small shed. I had to figure out ways around not having a miter saw, not having a jointer to edge joint boards, not having proper dust collection, and many other things. Now, I'm gonna show you some tips and tricks I learned to hopefully help you. First up is the miter saw. Now, to be a woodworker, literally all you have to do is cut the wood and put the wood together. That's kind of the simplest form of that. A miter saw does help you do cross cuts, and it does it well, but they are also very expensive depending on the model you're looking at. I have a budget model that I'll link in the description below if you're interested in just going ahead and upgrading, but you don't need a miter saw to get started, and you can cut angles without one, or square cuts. Let me show you. So how do you get away with not having a miter saw? Well, this might be the single most useful tool right behind the tape measure that you can buy, and this is a Swanson Speed Square. I recommend this one because it's very inexpensive, very accurate, and extremely useful. Some say it's handy as a shirt pocket. It just gets hung in there sometimes. It's a really good square. Now check this out. I'm gonna use the very first power tool I started with, and that is this Master Mechanic, no name brand, off-brand, very inexpensive, very borrowed, but I still have, circular saw. Now, this was my dad's. He let me borrow it to get started, and he eventually gave it to me. Now, you can make good, accurate, straight cuts even with less expensive tools like this one. You just need a decent blade. This is a Diablo blade on there. Those are really nice blades for what you use them for, circular saws. Now, what I do to get really square cuts is I just use the Speed Square as a guide from anything on 2x6s or under, 2x4s, things like that. I built a bunch of these outdoor chair sets. J-Bates has free plans for these. You can just search J-Bates outdoor chair set. You'll find these plans for free. And I use this Speed Square to build a bunch of them. All you have to do is use this as a guide to get straight cuts. It's just hold it up against the edge of your lumber and then use that as a guide. Let your circular saw's base ride against the edge of that. You'll get good, accurate, straight cuts every time. It's easy. Some people can freehand straight cuts. If you can, congratulations. But I use this to get good square cuts. Now, what about angles? Because those outdoor chair sets require 10-degree angles, and that's what most people want a miter saw for, is those angles, this will help you get that. Now, is it as easy as a miter saw? No, but you can still accomplish the task. I sold a bunch of these chairs just using this as a 10-degree angle to get those angles on the feet. All you have to do is set it at 10 degrees and make that mark. And then if you want to freehand it, which you see here, I freehanded it, you did a pretty good job. It's pretty close. The problem is if you freehand it and you're off a little bit, when you get your chair fully built, it may wobble a little bit. That is fixable, but it's best if you don't have to deal with it. What I like to do is just hold this on the 10-degree mark and again, use that as an edge guide. You're not pushing too much pressure to the left that it's causing you to move. It's just enough to guide the saw so that it cuts that 10-degree angle that you're needing. You can do that with basically any angle using the Speed Square. That's how you get around that. But what about cutting wider pieces? Say you have a 2x10, 2x12, or even a piece of sheet goods like this piece of MDF that's about 12 inches wide. If you use a square, little Speed Square on that, what winds up happening is after you go past the end, it has a tendency to go to the left a little bit, and then you got a little inaccurate cut there. You don't want that. So you can use a framing square. These also are inexpensive. And then when you add the framing square fence, this is also inexpensive. This gives you a 24-inch wide crosscut guide. And this is a game changer. This thing is fantastic because it's so inexpensive, because it will attach to any framing square. Get a metal one. I like this one. I'll drop a link to all this in the description. When you make that crosscut, this will get you accurate wide cross cuts up to 24 inches wide. And one thing you can do to make it even better is just clamp the end down so that this doesn't move. Because it does have a lot of leverage out here on the end, especially when you get further out there, you want to clamp this down so that it doesn't move. It's very simple to do with a cheap clamp, and then you can cut that. And as you can see here, very, very square cut, just using a circular saw, a framing square, and this handy dandy fence right there. Before we get to number 2, I got something I want to share with you. If you want to watch YouTube without ads or to play videos in the background, which is what I do all the time, you got to check out my affiliate link. First link in the description and the pinned comment. If you use that link to sign up, you get 2 free months of YouTube Premium. You can try it out, see if you like it. If you use that link, I may get a commission, but it helps me and it helps you. and it's an awesome experience. Check it out. Next up is a jointer. You can edge joint boards without a jointer a couple of ways. I'm gonna show you 2 ways here that I've done it over the years, and we're gonna start with the easiest, least expensive, and that's with a 4-foot level. Now it has to be, or it should be, an I-beam style level. In other words, it looks like the letter I if you look at the end of it, and it's metal. It needs to be a metal level from a reputable brand. I like this Stanley, but you use whatever you like. Empire, anything like that, you find at local home stores will work just fine. First thing is first, you gotta make sure it's level. Just look down it. If it don't look bowed, you'll probably be all right. Now, next thing you do is take this over to the table saw. If you have a table saw. I know beginners don't need, but if you have a table saw, this is how you can edge joint the board. You take the level, put it against the fence, and then you set the board against the level. Now, you have to make sure that the end of the level and the end of the board are touching so that you can push those through together. They have to move at the exact same time. A lot of people say, what's the difference in just using the level versus using the fence? If you use just the fence against the edge of this board, basically the cut edge will be referencing this side of the board, which could be bowed or have a knot or anything like that in it, and it's gonna throw it off. It will throw it off. When you put this against it, the blade has a flat, straight reference on the right side to use to cut a good straight cut. When you do that, you're gonna get a good straight cut on this side of the board. Once you have this side straight, you can literally flip this over and then use this against the fence to rip the other side. Now you've got 2 parallel sides. Works like a dream. Where this is useful is if you're making panels, AKA tabletops, which is what I used it for a lot. When you do that, it's gonna remove that factory edge, which is rounded over, which will give you a nice tight seam there to be able to glue up. This works really good. Is it 100% perfect? Not always. Having a good feather board on there to keep that pressure against the fence or against the level then a fence, it really does help push that horizontal pressure and keeps everything nice and straight. If you have a feather board, there's various ones out there from inexpensive to more expensive. Now the good thing about the level trick is you can use that on job site saws, cabinet saws, really doesn't matter. I use it for a long time on my Delta saw. Works extremely well. I like the 4-foot style. Now you can only joint about 4.5 to 5 feet long boards with this method simply because of the length of the level. It just doesn't work out better than that. But this will work on a 2-foot level, but the 4-foot just gives you a little more runway. But this is a good solution if you don't have a jointer and you don't want to build a jig, which is what I'm going to show you now. Next up, if you want to joint without a jointer, you can use a jig like this. This is simply a sheet of plywood with some dovetail grooves cut in it using a palm router. This is a very simple jig to use and it works extremely well. Actually better than the level. I like this method a lot better. You just get better results that are repeatable. In other words, it just comes out better every time using the jig. Now, jig's very simple to make. I have plans for this on my website, 731woodworks.com. You can go check out. It is a jointing jig. Now, it uses dovetail grooves, so if you have a palm router, you can make this really easy. All you're gonna do is take a dovetail bit and route 2 parallel lines down each side of this jig, and then I put some cross lines in there or cross dovetail grooves in there just for extra clamping options. You can put stop blocks in there, anything like that. Once you have the jig built, all you do is put your board on the jig and clamp it down with those dovetail clamps and then run it through the saw. This works extremely well, and it'll work on job site saws, cabinet saws, anything like that, and you have a nice, really nice square edge. This works better than the level, but the level will get you by should you need to not want to build a jig or have the dovetail clamps or anything like that. It's just a less expensive option, but the jig does work better and it's easy to make. And besides, if you have the dovetail clamps and the dovetail bits, you can build all kinds of stuff using that for your shop. I built a portable workbench using it and several other nice little jigs around the shop that use that dovetail groove system. If you find this valuable, hit that subscribe button, click the bell icon so you get notified when I upload the next video. The next thing a beginner absolutely does not need is a track saw, and in some uses that we're going to show you, it can take the place of a table saw if you don't have one of those either. But if you're needing to rip down like plywood, sheet goods, there's a couple of options here. First and foremost, you can just get a straight edge. I got this Swanson straight edge, I think it was 8 foot long, that I used for a very long time, and I could rip full length sheets of plywood with that. Or if you're just doing a lot of cross cutting up to 24 inches, this has been a lifesaver for me, and this is called a Craig Rip Cut. This Craig Rip Cut will fit most any circular saw because of the way it's designed here on this shoe that fits the saw. And then you can just use this as an edge guide, similar to how we use the square with the fence for those cross cuts. This kind of works the same way, but this slides along with the saw. This is like a track saw in a way. The only thing you have to watch out for on this is when you get to the end of the cut, similar to using the small speed square at the end where the saw had a tendency to walk, remember? This will do the same thing at the end of the cut just because of the way it's designed. You just have to keep pressure back here on this part as you slide it through the cut and you'll be fine. But you just takes a little practice. Using the long straight edge along with that Craig grip cut, you can pretty much get away with not having a track saw. Now a table saw is just a whole different beast in and of itself because of the ability to rip down small parts and build jigs for it. I recommend a table saw to be able to buy it as soon as you can because it's just a tool that while you can make projects without one, once you get one it does open up a world for you depending on what you're making too. I made those outdoor chairs and benches without ever having a table saw for a very long time. And it's okay. You don't need it to make certain projects, but certain sheet goods and small parts, it works better. And one of the tools that I called a total game changer was the Milescraft Track Guide. Now this will fit most any circular saw and turn it into a track saw. If you just need to make straight cuts, this is a great tool. I wish they would have had this when I started, especially for cutting plywood and other sheet goods. This is literally a game changer because of the price. It's about $99. You get all the tracks and you get just put your current circular saw on there and you've basically got a track saw. The only drawback to this was that it couldn't do bevel cuts. But if you're just cutting plywood, you probably don't need that. You just need a way to cut straight, accurate cuts on longer runs like plywood. And this is a real game changer for those who just need something on a budget to cut straight cuts. Cut straight cuts. Should be a t-shirt. Cut straight cuts. Next up is dust collection. Beginners don't necessarily need a very expensive dust collection, if any at all. For a long time, I had zero dust collection other than a leaf blower, and I would just blow the dust out of the garage or the little shed when I first started back there. The first dust collection you should buy is dust collection for your lungs. You don't want that stuff going in your lungs, and if you don't have anything at all, just get a dust mask. I like these. This is called RZ mask. I like the M2 model. That's the model you see here. And one of the main reasons I like them is because they have replaceable filters. When this filter gets dirty, you can literally pop one out, pop a new one back in, and you're good to go. And they're very comfortable to wear. The main thing I like about these, it's easy on, easy off, and they work. It's just gonna filter out that fine dust. And if it's easy to use and it's comfortable to wear, you'll actually use this more than you would something that's uncomfortable or takes a long time to put on and off. They have a bunch of different colors depending on what you like. I like the brighter colors mainly because it's just easier to see when it's laying around the shop versus the more muted colors. But that's the first thing you should buy, in my opinion, is a dust mask because you probably don't, starting out, have shop vacs or even dust extractors or anything like that to help filter out that dust first. This is the first defense. After the dust mask, just a simple shop vac and something just to start collecting the dust as much as possible. These can range from very expensive to very cheap, depending on what model you like, what brand you like. It really doesn't matter. I think you should look for one that's over 5 or 6 horsepower. I like that power range because it just gives you a little bit more suction and they just work well. I actually reviewed a Craftsman a while back, 6.5 horsepower. For this price point and this horsepower, I think 6.5 peak horsepower, very good value option there. And you can pick that up at Lowe's or even Amazon. I'll link to it in the description. One drawback to a shop vac is it will fill up with dust pretty quick, especially if you're using it on some bigger tools. One fix for that is just to get a dust separator, and there are tons on the market. I have this Dust Right separator that I use for a long time. That works extremely well. There's also the mullet that I did a video on that works really well also. What that does is separate the bulk of the dust, in other words, the bigger chips and things like that, before it goes into the shop vac so it doesn't clog up your filters or fill up your bag or even fill up your shop vac. It literally just leaves you with a bin of dust, much like a dust collector would, that you can empty and then just start all over. If you are looking to get into some budget dust extraction or dust collection, you have to check out the Harbor Freight dust extractor. This is a HEPA dust extractor. Comes with dual HEPA filters, which is going to filter down to like 0.3 microns, that really fine dust that you may see floating around that gets in your lungs. It's very unhealthy. That dust extractor, for the price, I think it's like $2.99, excellent value. Excellent value, especially on smaller tools like sanders, routers, circular saws, or even track saws. It's just a really good option for a budget level dust extractor. For larger tools, I would absolutely suggest that separator before it goes into the shop vac or the extractor. And then of course the leaf blower to blow out the rest, which is, I still do that today. That's how I stay so clean. If you want to stick around after number 5, I got a bonus tool you don't need that you can work around. The next thing beginners don't need is a router table. Now, router tables are very nice to have. I've reviewed some budget options as well on this topic. I think it was a skill. It's a really good option for a budget, but if you don't have space or you don't have the budget to get one, but you already have a palm router, there's some things you can do to get around not having that router table to do some very cool stuff. First is an edge guide. Your palm router either came with an edge guide or likely has an option to purchase one, very inexpensive. I use edge guides all the time for these palm routers. They are super handy to have. Like if you're building the jointing jig, you use an edge guide to keep you away from the edge a certain distance so that you can get that nice straight groove. This is a good option when you don't have a router table with a fence. It basically replaces that option because you have that edge guide. You could use these for a ton of different applications as well, whether that be installing tabletop fasteners or creating grooves, dados, dovetails, all kinds of stuff with the edge guide. And remember this little jewel, you can use this to be an edge guide for your router. I did that when I was making the portable workbench. I just used this carpenter square fence with this actual carpenter square that you see here to route those cross dovetails in my portable workbench. So you can use edge guides for this, long or short like this one, to do various tasks with your palm router. You can also use templates with your palm router with a flush trim bit. This is a Craig brand. I like this one because it has a handle on top and you can do radiuses and chamfers on the edges of your boards. This just dresses things up, especially if you're doing like cutting boards or charcuterie boards or even furniture that you need a rounded edge at the end of a board. These work well and they're not that expensive. There's also some aluminum versions you can get on Amazon that are a little less expensive, but you do put your hands a little closer to that bit, and so it just depends on how comfortable you are with that. Then of course you can buy just templates like these or make your own. These are just acrylic templates. I'll drop a link to where they have some very cool ones like a dog tag and different shapes for charcuterie boards, things like that. Is you just use the flush trim bit along with your router and a template, and then you can start making, then you can batch out things like this to sell, to give as gifts, all that kind of stuff. You can use these on the router table, obviously, or you could just use them with your palm router and a flush trim bit. That's where these really shine, and you don't need that router table. All right, the bonus is a drill press. Now, drill presses can be, I have a benchtop Wind that I've had for a long time. I think I gave around 200, 250 for it several years ago. It's been a good tool to have in the shop, but that was not a priority of mine starting out. But there were several times that I needed to be able to drill straight holes. I would love to have had a drill press, but there's ways around it. So Mousecraft makes this drill guide, and you can use this with any drill to drill various angles holes as well as straight up and down holes. If you don't have a drill press or you don't have room for a drill press or the budget for a drill press, but you do need to make straight, accurate holes, repeatable over and over and over, you should check out this. It's very inexpensive for what you're getting, and it will work with your current drills that you already have. So that's a good way to get around not having a drill press. This is also very useful if you do have a drill press and you just need to take it portable to drill a hole on a product or a project that you can't get to the drill press. If it's already done, you just need a hole, whatever the case may be. One thing to keep in mind is these are fixes to get around not having the big tools. The big tools are there for a reason, and people buy them for a reason because they do make things faster and easier. I'll drop some of my best budget picks for those tools in the description below so you can go check them out for yourself to see if they fit your budget and your needs. If you're looking for some easy to follow step-by-step woodworking plans for beginners, I put together a beginner bundle, a bunch of different projects for you if you're a beginner to help you get started. You can build those, keep for yourself, or you can sell those projects once they're built to make some extra money. And to help you out, if you use the code BEGIN, I will give you 20% off that already discounted bundle just to help you a little further. Go check it out, 731woodworks.com/store. Curious what power tools you did without and how you got around not having those when you started. Let me know that in the comments. If you like these tips and tricks, you'll love those right there. 99% of beginners don't know those tips and tricks. Click that box, get you the big old virtual fist bump. Go check out that video. It's a nice list for you.